We live in a world that is constantly pulling us away from our true essence. There's so much noise, distraction, and external pressure that it's easy to ignore the subtle signs that something deeper is happening inside of us. Most people move through life without ever realizing that they have spiritual gifts. But you're different. You're here because you felt it, haven't you? That little nudge, that whisper, that strange feeling that maybe, just maybe, you're not like everyone else. Maybe there's something more to you than meets the eye. Maybe there's a deeper purpose, a hidden power that you've yet to fully understand. And you're right. There is something more. But here's the thing, spiritual gifts don't always show up in the ways we expect. It's easy to overlook them, to brush them off as coincidence or imagination, especially in a world that doesn't always value the spiritual. But you can't afford to keep ignoring these signs, because the truth is, these gifts are the key to unlocking your true potential. They're the tools you need to fulfill your purpose, to make the impact you were born to make. So, let me ask you something. How many times have you felt something strange, something unexplainable, and just ignored it? You see, the signs that you have spiritual gifts are often subtle at first, like a soft knock on the door of your soul. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss them. But if you learn to recognize them, if you stop ignoring them, you'll begin to unlock a power within you that most people can't even comprehend. And that's why I'm here today, to help you stop ignoring these signs and start embracing your spiritual gifts.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
One of the first signs is something you've likely experienced without even realizing it, an unusual sensitivity to the energy around you. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the mood shift? Maybe you didn't see or hear anything different, but you felt it. Like the air itself was charged with emotion, with tension, with something unspoken. That's not just your imagination. That's your spiritual sensitivity picking up on the energy that others can't perceive. It's one of the clearest signs that you have spiritual gifts. But here's what most people do: they ignore it. They shrug it off as just a feeling and move on. But you can't afford to do that anymore. Because that feeling, that sensitivity, is your gift trying to speak to you. But let's go deeper. What do you do with that feeling? Do you trust it? Or do you push it aside, telling yourself you're just being overly sensitive? Because here's the truth: your sensitivity is a gift. It allows you to read the energy of people, places, and situations in ways that others can't. It's like having a spiritual radar, constantly giving you information that can guide you, protect you, and help you make better decisions. But if you ignore it, if you don't learn to trust it, you'll miss out on the guidance it offers. And then there's the second sign: vivid, intense dreams or visions. Have you ever had a dream that felt more real than reality itself? A dream that stayed with you long after you woke up, as if it was trying to tell you something. Maybe it wasn't just a dream. Maybe it was a message, a glimpse into a deeper reality, a spiritual truth that your conscious mind isn't yet ready to fully understand. Dreams are one of the most powerful ways that our spiritual gifts communicate with us. But again, most people ignore them. They wake up, shake off the dream, and go about their day without ever considering the possibility that the dream was more than just their subconscious mind at play. But for you, those dreams are important. They're part of your spiritual gift. So let me ask you, what are your dreams trying to tell you? Because here's the thing: when you have spiritual gifts, your dreams aren't just dreams. They're windows into another dimension, a place where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds blur. If you start paying attention to them, if you start asking yourself what they mean, you'll begin to unlock a whole new level of spiritual understanding. But there's more. Another sign that you have spiritual gifts is an inexplicable pull toward nature, toward the elements, toward the earth itself. Have you ever felt more at peace in the forest, by the ocean, or under the stars than you do anywhere else? That's not just a preference. For nature, it's a spiritual connection. It's a sign that your soul is deeply tuned into the natural world, that you have the ability to communicate with the earth in a way that most people can't. But again, how often do we ignore the pull? How often do we get caught up in the busyness of life and forget to listen to the wisdom of the earth? Let me ask you, when was the last time you truly connected with nature? Because if you have spiritual gifts, nature is your greatest eye. It's where you can recharge, recalibrate, and realign with your true self. The trees, the wind, the water, they're all speaking to you, offering you guidance, offering you healing. But if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. And that's why you can't afford to keep ignoring these signs. Let's talk about something that you've probably experienced without even realizing it was a sign of your spiritual gifts: empathy. And I don't just mean the ability to relate to others or feel compassion for them. I'm talking about deep empathy, the kind where you don't just understand what someone is going through, but you feel it. Have you ever been around someone who was sad, anxious, or angry, and suddenly you started feeling those same emotions as if they were your own? That's not a coincidence. That's your spiritual gift of empathy at work. But here's the problem: most people don't recognize it as a gift. They see it as a burden. They get overwhelmed by the emotions of others, not realizing that this sensitivity is actually a sign of something much deeper. And maybe that's been your experience too. Maybe you found yourself feeling drained after being around certain people, or maybe you've struggled with emotional boundaries, not understanding why you seem to absorb the energy of those around you. But what if I told you that this is one of the clearest signs that you have spiritual gifts? You see, empathy is more than just an emotional response. It's a form of energetic communication. It's your spirit picking up on the vibrations of others, tuning into their emotional and energetic state, and translating that into a feeling within you. And while it might feel overwhelming at times, it's actually one of the most powerful spiritual gifts you can have. Because when you learn to manage it, when you learn to use it consciously, you can become a healer, a guide, a source of comfort and wisdom for others. But that leads me to a question: how are you managing your empathy? Are you letting it overwhelm you, or are you learning to work with it? Because the truth is, if you have this gift, you can't afford to ignore it. So don't you need to learn how to protect your energy, how to set boundaries, and how to use your empathy as a tool for healing rather than a decoy source of pain? And that's where the real power of this gift lies. It's not just about feeling others' emotions, it's about using that sensitivity to help, to heal, to guide. But empathy isn't the only sign. Another one that people often overlook is a strong sense of intuition. Have you ever had a gut feeling about something that turned out to be right? Maybe you just knew something was going to happen, or you had a feeling about someone before you even met them. That's not just coincidence, that's your intuition at work, and it's one of the clearest signs that you have spiritual gifts. You see, intuition is like a spiritual GPS. It's constantly guiding you, giving you information that your logical mind can't always understand. It's that feeling in your gut, that quiet voice in the back of your mind, that sense of knowing that doesn't come from rational thought. And the more you trust it, the stronger it becomes. But here's the thing: most people ignore their intuition. They second-guess themselves, they overthink, they let their logical mind take over. But you can't afford to do that. Because if you have spiritual gifts, your intuition is one of your most powerful tools. So, let me ask you, How often do you trust your intuition? Because the more you trust it, the more it will guide you. And the more it guides you, the more you'll begin to unlock the full potential of your spiritual gifts. But if you keep ignoring it, if you keep second-guessing yourself, you'll miss out on the guidance that's trying to come through. And then there's another sign that you might not even realize is connected to your spiritual gifts: synchronicities. Have you ever experienced a series of coincidences that felt too strange to be random? Maybe you were thinking about someone and they called you, or you kept seeing the same numbers over and over again, like 11, 11, or 333. When these aren't just coincidences, they're signs. They're the universe's way of communicating with you, guiding you, and letting you know that you're on the right path. But again, most people ignore them. They brush them off as random chance and move on without ever considering the possibility that these synchronicities are actually a sign of their spiritual gifts. But you're different. You're here because you're starting to notice these things, aren't you? You're starting to see the patterns, the signs, the subtle ways that the universe is trying to get your attention. So, let me ask you, what synchronicities have you been experiencing lately? Because the more you pay attention to them, the more you'll begin to see that they're not random at all. They're part of a larger pattern, a divine plan that's unfolding in your life. And as you begin to recognize them, as you begin to trust them, you'll start to unlock even more of your spiritual gifts. One of the clearest signs that you have spiritual gifts is an unexplainable pull toward the unknown, the mystical, the spiritual realms. Have you ever felt drawn to topics like astrology, tarot, energy healing, or ancient spiritual wisdom? Maybe you've always been fascinated by the mysteries of the universe, by things that most people dismiss as woo-woo or too out there. But here's the thing, that pull isn't random. It's a sign that your soul is awakening to its spiritual gifts. You see, when you have spiritual gifts, you're naturally drawn to the things that most people ignore or don't understand. You're curious about the deeper truths of existence, about the things that can't be explained by science or logic. And that curiosity is a sign that your spirit is calling you to explore your gifts more deeply. But let me ask you something. How often do you follow that curiosity? Do you allow yourself to explore the mystical, the unknown, the spiritual? Or do you hold back, afraid of what others might think? Because the truth is, if you have spiritual gifts, you can't afford to ignore that pull. It's guiding you toward the tools, the practices, the wisdom that will help you unlock your full potential. And the more you follow that curiosity, the more you'll begin to discover just how powerful your gifts really are. Another sign that you have spiritual gifts is a deep sense of compassion and a desire to help others. Have you ever felt an overwhelming need to help someone, even if you didn't know them well? So maybe you found yourself drawn to people who are suffering, offering them support, guidance, or just a listening ear. That's not just empathy, that's your spiritual gift of healing at work. It's a sign that your soul is here to help others, to bring light into the darkness, to offer comfort and wisdom to those who need it. But here's the thing, how often do you allow yourself to fully step into that role? Do you embrace your role as a healer, as a guide, as someone who can make a difference in the lives of others? Or do you hold back, afraid that you're not qualified, that you're not ready, that you don't have enough to offer? Because the truth is, you have everything you need within you. Your spiritual gifts are already there, waiting for you to recognize them, to trust them, and to use them for the highest good. And that leads me to one final sign, a deep inner knowing that you're here for a reason. Have you ever felt like you were meant for something more, something bigger than the life you're currently living? Maybe you've always had a sense that there's a higher purpose for your life, even if you're not exactly sure what it is yet. That feeling, that knowing, is one of the clearest signs that you have spiritual gifts. It's your soul's way of reminding you that you're here for a reason, that you have a mission, that you're meant to make a difference in the world. But let me ask you, are you listening to that inner knowing? Because the more you listen to it, the more you'll begin to align with your true purpose. And that's when your spiritual gifts will truly begin to shine. That's when you'll start to see the impact you were born to make, the lives you were meant to touch, the difference you were meant to create. So, stop ignoring these signs. Stop brushing them off as coincidence or imagination. All these signs are real, and they're guiding you toward your true potential. You have spiritual gifts, and it's time to start embracing them. Now that you're beginning to recognize these signs, the question becomes, what are you going to do about it? Because recognizing your spiritual gifts is only the first step. The real work begins when you start to fully embrace them, when you start to trust them, when you start to use them in your everyday life. And that's where most people get stuck. They see the signs, they feel the pull, but they're too afraid to take the next step. They're afraid of what others might think, afraid of stepping into the unknown, afraid of their own power. But you're different. You're here because you're ready to stop ignoring these signs. You're ready to step into your power, to embrace your gifts, to start living the life you were meant to live. And that's why I'm here to help you take that next step. So, let me ask you, what's holding you back? What fears, doubts, or limiting beliefs are keeping you from fully embracing your spiritual gifts? Because the truth is, those fears are just illusions. They're not real. They're the mind's way of keeping you small, of keeping you from stepping into your true power. But once you recognize them for what they are, once you see through the illusion, you'll begin to realize that there's nothing standing in your way. And that's when everything changes. That's when you start to see the world in a whole new way. You start to see the synchronicities, the signs, the guidance that's been there all along. Now you start to trust your intuition, your empathy, your sensitivity. You start to connect with nature, with the universe, with the deeper truths of existence. And most importantly, you start to live in alignment with your purpose. But here's the thing, this journey doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a path that unfolds over time. And the more you walk that path, the more your gifts will reveal themselves to you. The more you trust the signs, the more guidance you'll receive. And the more you embrace your gifts, the more you'll begin to see just how powerful you really are. So, let me ask you one final question. Are you ready to stop ignoring the signs and start embracing your spiritual gifts? Because the time is now. The signs are there. Your gifts are waiting. And the world needs you to step into your power, to embrace your purpose, to start living the life you were born to live.